"You will die if you go inside," yelled the virgin maid to the Mafia boss. And then this happened. A quiet maid in a black uniform runs into the night, grabs the arm of the most feared man in the city, and saves him from a trap wired to blow. He doesn't thank her. He claims her. For protection, for leverage, for something he doesn't dare name. Now she's locked inside his world. Armored cars, secret phones, and a rival ready to steal her little sister to make her talk. But the worst danger isn't out there. It's inside his own crew, where a smiling traitor sells them both out. A hidden ledger, a fake police roadblock, a midnight trade that turns into a war. As gunfire rains on the river and oaths turn into obsession, one choice could save a sister and crown a king in blood. When love feels like a loaded gun, who does the maid trust? The monster who became her shield, or the lie that might kill them all? Through the darkness, Celine's fingers trembled as she clutched her thin coat closer. The gunfire still echoed in her ears, a persistent ringing that wouldn't fade. Behind her, the lakeside estate blazed with lights, the sounds of chaos spilling across manicured lawns. Her sensible shoes crunched on gravel as she walked, each step carrying her further from the only steady employment she'd known. "Miss Vale." His voice stopped her in her tracks. Low, controlled, but underneath lay steel that brooked no argument. Konstantin Volkov materialized from the shadows like smoke given form, his broad shoulders blocking the iron gates ahead. Even in darkness, his presence commanded attention. The perfectly tailored suit couldn't quite disguise the predator's grace in his movements. "Please," she whispered, "I just want to go home." But her voice wavered, betraying the fear she fought to contain. The memory of his hand over her mouth, the solid warmth of him shielding her from bullets, was still too fresh. "They saw you." Each word dropped like stones into still water. "The men inside, they know what you did." Celine's throat tightened. I couldn't let people die, not when I heard them planning." She trailed off, remembering the whispered conversation she'd overheard while balancing her serving tray. The casual way they'd discussed the tripwire, the ambush, the killing. "No." His pale eyes studied her face. "You couldn't!" Behind him, gravel crunched as a black SUV pulled up, Sergei at the wheel. The vehicle's headlights cast long shadows across the driveway. "Your choices now are limited," Konstantin continued, his accent thickening slightly. "They will come for you, a witness who ruined their plans. They cannot leave that loose end." Celine wrapped her arms around herself, mind racing. She thought of her small apartment, of her younger sister Morella waiting at home. "I have responsibilities, people who need me. And they will be the first targets used to draw you out." He stepped closer, and Celine caught a hint of expensive cologne mixed with gunpowder. "I am offering protection, Miss Vale. Do not mistake this for a request." The SUV's engine idled, a low rumble in the night. Sergei remained silent at the wheel, face impassive, but his eyes constantly scanned their surroundings through the windshield. "My sister," Celine said, lifting her chin. "I won't leave without her." Something flickered in Konstantin's expression. Approval, perhaps. "Of course, Sergei will collect her now if you provide the address." More vehicles were approaching the estate, their headlights sweeping the grounds. Shouts carried across the manicured lawns. Time was running out. "You saved my life tonight," Konstantin said quietly. "Allow me to return the favor." Celine closed her eyes briefly, weighing options that weren't really options at all. The gunmen had seen her face. They knew she worked here. Finding her would be simple, and they would hurt anyone close to her in the process. "My sister is at 1247 Pine Street, apartment 3B, she finally said. "Her name is Morella. She's 18. Konstantin nodded to Sergei, who smoothly pulled away into the darkness. The older man's perpetual frown had softened slightly at Celine's quick decision to trust them with her sister's location. "The next few hours will be critical," Konstantin said, opening the rear door of a second vehicle that had pulled up silently. "We need to move quickly." Celine slid into the leather interior, her uniform skirt whispering against the seats. Konstantin followed, settling beside her with fluid grace. The door closed with a soft thud, sealing them in together. "What happens now?" she asked, hating how small her voice sounded. "Now we keep you alive." He spoke matter-of-factly, as if discussing the weather rather than her survival. "Both you and your sister will be moved to a secure location. My people will retrieve anything essential from your apartment." The car pulled away from the estate, tires crunching on gravel before hitting smooth pavement. Through the tinted windows, Celine watched the only life she'd known for the past year recede into darkness. Her uniform still smelled faintly of appetizers and champagne from the gala, a reminder of how quickly everything had changed. "I don't understand," she said softly. "Why go to such lengths to protect me? Anyone else would have just—" She trailed off, unable to finish the thought. Constantine turned those pale eyes on her again. In the dim interior, they seemed to glow with an inner light. "You saw a threat to strangers and chose to act at great personal risk. That kind of courage and conscience is rare. I protect what is valuable, Miss Vale." His words hung in the air between them, heavy with implications she wasn't ready to examine. Instead, she focused on the passing streetlights, each one carrying her further from her old life and deeper into whatever dark world she'd stumbled into. The car moved smoothly through the night, its powerful engine barely a whisper. Celine's hands had finally stopped shaking, but exhaustion was setting in, the adrenaline crash hitting hard. She fought to keep her eyes open, knowing she should stay alert, stay aware of where they were going. But the leather seats were soft, the car's motion gentle, and the events of the night weighed heavily on her. Beside her, Constantine made a quiet phone call in Russian, his voice too low for her to catch the words. The familiar sounds of the city gradually faded, replaced by the whisper of trees as they left the urban sprawl behind. They were heading somewhere remote, somewhere hidden, somewhere safe, she had to believe. She had no choice but to trust this dangerous man who spoke of protection with such calm certainty. The city lights blurred past the bulletproof glass as Celine sat rigid in the leather back seat, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles showed white. The elegant sedan moved smoothly through the night, part of a 3-vehicle convoy that had just fled the chaos at the lakeside estate. "Tell me exactly what you heard," Constantine said from beside her, his voice calm and measured. Despite the earlier violence, not a hair was out of place, his expensive suit still pristine. Celine swallowed hard. "2 men in the chapel foyer. They were checking something, a tripwire, they said. One complained about having to wait so long. Details matter, their exact words, if you can remember." She closed her eyes, forcing herself back to that moment. "Is the wire set?" Then, "Yeah, just inside the doors. Getting cramped in here." Her voice shook slightly. "Won't be much longer. They said midnight." Constantine nodded slowly. "You did well. I'm offering you protection at my penthouse. 48 hours, medical attention, complete privacy. Time to sort this out properly." "I can't," Celine shook her head. "I need to get home." Her phone buzzed. The caller ID showed the estate's number. Signora Bianchi's shrill voice filled the car as Celine answered on speaker. "Your employment is terminated, effective immediately. And Detective Calder is here. He insists on escorting you back to give your statement about this disruption." Constantine's expression hardened at the detective's name. He reached into his suit jacket and withdrew a thin file, offering it to Celine. Inside were photographs of a man in plain clothes, Detective Calder, entering various gambling establishments, along with betting slips and IOUs bearing his signature. "Calder belongs to Vincenzi," Constantine explained quietly. "His debts ensure his loyalty. If you go to the station tonight, you disappear." Celine's hands trembled as she closed the file. "I understand." She took a steadying breath. "Your penthouse, then?" The convoy wound through the sleeping city before entering an underground garage beneath a gleaming high-rise. 2 more security teams joined them in the private elevator, which opened directly into a stunning penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows. A medic was waiting, his kit already open. As he examined the cut on Celine's palm, from broken glass during the shooting, Constantine dismissed him with a gesture and took over, threading a curved needle with practiced ease. "This will sting," he warned, his touch surprisingly gentle as he cleaned the wound. "Look at me, not the needle. Tell me about the chapel windows. You mentioned stained glass earlier." Celine focused on his face, grateful for the distraction. "Yes, medieval scenes mostly. Saints and angels. The morning light makes them glow like jewels." She winced as the needle pierced her skin. "Which window is your favorite?" His steady hands never paused in their work. "The east window. It shows a garden with peacocks and lilies. The blues are incredible, deep as the ocean." She was babbling now, anything to ignore the pull of thread through flesh. "The artist used silver stain for the highlights. It catches the sunrise perfectly." "Almost done," Constantine murmured. "You have an eye for detail. It serves you well. The sky was beginning to lighten, pale pink touching the eastern windows when a phone began to ring. Not her personal phone. The cheap burner phone she'd forgotten was still in her apron pocket after being fired before she could change. The voice that answered was distorted, electronic. 6:45 a.m. Vale arrives for morning shift. 7:30, breakfast service begins. 12:15 p.m., lunch preparation in main kitchen. 2 us, afternoon tea, setup in conservatory. 6:30, pre-gala staff briefing. It continued, reciting her entire day's schedule with chilling accuracy. Celine's blood ran cold. Someone had been watching. Someone had fed her movements to the gunman. Constantine's face went absolutely still, the kind of stillness that preceded violence. He pressed a button on his desk. Sergei, full lockdown. I want every device from every staff member at the estate, and move Miss Vale to the inner suite. His voice was arctic. I have questions for our people there. The security teams moved with practiced efficiency, securing doors and windows. Sergei appeared silently to escort her deeper into the penthouse, away from the vulnerable glass walls. Celine followed, her legs unsteady. The elegant guest suite had no windows, but the walls held beautiful paintings of forests and mountains, bringing nature inside where bullets couldn't reach. The bed was massive, draped in soft grays and blues. Rest, Sergei said gruffly, his first word to her all night. Door stays locked. I'll be outside. Celine sank onto the edge of the bed, still in her uniform, as multiple locks engaged. She could hear Constantine's voice in the hallway, speaking rapid Russian into a phone. The words were foreign, but his tone was clear. Someone would pay for this breach. Her stitched palm throbbed in time with her heartbeat. She stared at the neat black sutures, remembering the careful way he'd sewn her skin together. Such gentleness from hands that had likely ended lives. The same hands that had pulled her to safety behind that marble pillar, that had covered her mouth to keep her quiet as bullets flew. The burner phone sat on the nightstand where she'd placed it, innocent-looking but deadly in its implications. Someone had watched her for days, perhaps weeks. Someone had known exactly where she would be, when she would be there. Someone had meant for her to die alongside Konstantin Volkov in that chapel. Instead, she'd saved his life. And now her own life hung by a thread as delicate as the ones in her palm. A thread held by a man who dealt in death, but had shown her nothing but protection. Light filtered through unfamiliar curtains when Celine opened her eyes. For a moment, she couldn't place the luxurious weight of the down comforter or the absolute silence surrounding her. No rattling pipes, no morning bustle of the estate's staff corridors. Just stillness and the whisper of expensive sheets against her skin. A silver tray sat on the bedside table, eggs perfectly poached, whole-grain toast, and Earl Grey tea in fine bone china. Beside it lay a crisp white note in precise handwriting. You're safe here. 48 hours. Then you choose. She was still in yesterday's uniform, wrinkled from sleep. The events of the night crashed back. Gunfire, the chapel, Constantine's hands stitching her wound. Her palm throbbed at the memory. The bedroom door opened, and Constantine entered with a leather folder. His suit was fresh, but shadows beneath his eyes betrayed his sleepless night. Good morning. I trust you slept? Yes, thank you. She sat straighter, suddenly aware of her disheveled state. He placed the folder before her. A protection agreement. My lawyer drafted it overnight. Read carefully. It limits my authority to security matters only. You maintain autonomy in all other aspects. Celine pored over each clause, her father's voice in her head, reminding her to check the fine print. The terms were surprisingly favorable. She would not be traded, sold, or used as leverage. Her movements would only be restricted when her safety was at risk. This is fair, she said finally, signing her name. I keep my word, he replied simply. Needing to quiet her racing thoughts, Celine fell into familiar patterns. She straightened the suite, organized the bathroom supplies, and noticed signs of Constantine's night vigil. 2 cold coffee mugs on his desk, untouched. At 3 p.m, he appeared in her doorway. Come, you need to eat something substantial. The private kitchen was a chef's dream, all gleaming steel and marble. Constantine rolled up his sleeves and began chopping herbs with practiced efficiency. The knife moved with the same precise control she'd witnessed in everything he did. You cook? She asked, unable to hide her surprise. A hint of amusement crossed his face. Did you expect I survived on fear and bullets alone? Well, no, but Mafia. Bosses should take their meals in expensive restaurants, terrorizing the waitstaff. His dry humor caught her off guard. I find cooking centering. Watch the sauce. As she stirred the pan of simmering tomatoes, an idea formed. The phone call, they knew my schedule. Could we cross-reference the chapel's gala donor list with recent financial activity? Look for unusual patterns? Constantine paused mid-chop, studying her. You think the money will talk. Money always talks. My father taught me that. He nodded slowly. I'll have Sergei bring sanitized records. You can work while I question a contact about Vincenzi's movements. The afternoon passed in a blur of spreadsheets and numbers. Celine lost herself in the familiar dance of debits and credits, looking for the thread that would lead them to the caller. The sun was setting when Sergei burst in. Detective Calder is in the lobby. He has a warrant. Constantine's face hardened. Bring him up. Call Marcus. Minutes later, Calder swaggered in, waving papers. Miss Vale needs to come with me. Now. A distinguished man in an impeccable suit, Marcus presumably, appeared silently at Constantine's shoulder. He examined the warrant, lips thinning. This is remarkably broad in scope, detective. Almost. Suspiciously so. He produced a slim file. Perhaps we should discuss your recent financial difficulties. These IOUs to Vincenzi are particularly concerning. Color drained from Calder's face. This isn't over, he snarled, but retreated quickly. After he left, Constantine turned to Celine. You understand now? Leaving draws predators. My world has found you. There's no walking away cleanly. Celine stepped onto the balcony, letting the cool evening air fill her lungs. The city sparkled below, beautiful and treacherous. There's no going back to yesterday, is there? She whispered, more to herself than him. No safe path back to my old life? Constantine joined her, keeping a careful distance. No, but I can offer you a new path forward, one where you're protected. She traced the skyline with her eyes, remembering quiet days of dusting furniture and polishing silver. Simple days, safe days, gone now like morning mist burning away in sunshine. The ledgers, she said finally. I found something interesting in the donation patterns. 3 shell companies, all routing funds through the same offshore account. Show me. Inside, she spread the papers across his desk. See these transfers? They're timed perfectly to mask larger movements. Someone's using the chapel's charity status to clean money. His expression sharpened with interest. Good work. This gives us a starting point. He studied her face. You have your father's eye for details? You knew my father? I know of him. His skills were appreciated in certain circles. The implications of that settled heavily in her stomach. How many ledgers had her father actually balanced? How many books had he cooked? A gentle knock interrupted them. Sergei entered with fresh coffee and a tablet. Sir, the security feeds from the estate just arrived. Good. We'll review them tonight. Constantine turned to Celine. Rest. Tomorrow we'll dig deeper into those accounts. Back in her suite, Celine sat on the edge of the bed, touching the stitches in her palm. In 24 hours, her world had shifted on its axis. She'd gone from arranging flowers and serving canapes to analyzing criminal finances with a man who commanded fear with a whisper. The strange thing was, she didn't feel afraid. Not of him, at least. What terrified her was how natural it felt to sit across from him, sharing coffee and parsing numbers, as if she belonged in this dangerous new world. Midnight cast long shadows across the penthouse kitchen as Constantine spread a map across the granite island. His finger traced 2 parallel routes leading north. We move before dawn, he said, voice low and controlled. 2 vehicles. Sergei leads. You ride with me, 30 minutes between departures. No stops. Celine gripped the counter's edge. I need 1 detour, my sister Mirella. She's alone in our apartment. Her hands trembled slightly. The caller. They listed her school schedule. Times, classes, everything. Constantine's expression hardened. How old? 16. She's all I have. He studied her face for a long moment before nodding. After my team sweeps the area. He retrieved a slim phone from his pocket. Untraceable. Text her, code words only, nothing obvious. Tell her to stay inside, doors locked. Celine's fingers flew across the keys. Remember Dad's birthday game? Play inside until I bring cake, their old signal for trouble. Stay put, stay safe. The reply came instantly, playing quiet. Promise. Relief loosened the knot in her chest. Mirella understood. A soft chime broke the tension. Constantine checked a burner phone, brows furrowing. Signora Bianchi, requesting a meet tomorrow, says she knows how your schedule leaked. Can we trust her? We'll find out. Public cafe, my terms. He typed a brief response. For now, we focus on extraction. The next hours passed in careful preparation. Sergei coordinated with the recon team, while Constantine walked Celine through emergency protocols. His attention to detail was both reassuring and terrifying. Every contingency planned, every escape route mapped. False dawn painted the sky in watery grays as they descended to the garage. Constantine's hand at her elbow guided her into the armored sedan. The leather seats still held night's chill. Stay low, he instructed as they pulled out. If anything happens, I follow Sergei's lead and your orders, she finished. I remember. A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. Good girl. The city slept as they crossed the causeway, water black and endless on both sides. Streetlights cast periodic pools of amber across the dashboard. Celine watched their reflection ripple across the water's surface, trying to calm her racing heart. The crack came without warning, sharp as a thunderclap. Spiderweb fissures bloomed across the windshield. The lead car swerved violently. Down! Constantine's arm slammed her into the footwell as another shot punched through the glass. His body covered hers, warm and solid, while Sergei executed a precise reverse, positioning his vehicle as a shield. Time stretched like taffy. Celine breathed in leather and gunpowder and something distinctly male. Constantine's heartbeat thundered against her shoulder, belying his outward calm. Status! He demanded into his calm. Clear path south, Sergei reported. Moving now! They peeled away from the ambush site, tires screaming. Constantine maintained his protective position until they reached a reinforced garage 10 minutes later. In the harsh fluorescent light, he examined something retrieved from the street, a heavy coin emblazoned with an ornate crest. His jaw tightened as he played the attached video message. A digitally altered voice filled the space. Dawn deadline, Volkov. The girl for her sister's life. Tick-tock. Celine snatched the coin, fingers tracing the familiar design. Arturo Vincenzi. I've seen this crest at the estate. He's escalating. Constantine's voice held deadly quiet. Sergei, abort safe house plan. Prepare for immediate extraction of the sister. Already coordinating teams, Sergei confirmed, phone to ear. Celine gripped the coin until its edges bit into her palm, the same palm Constantine had stitched hours ago, a lifetime ago. I won't let them use Morella. Whatever you need, whatever it takes, I'll help. Constantine studied her, something unreadable in his ice-blue eyes. You understand what you're offering. This isn't your world. It became my world the moment they threatened my sister. She met his gaze steadily. I'm not afraid of getting my hands dirty anymore. No, he said softly. You're afraid of losing her. There's a difference. He took the coin from her white-knuckled grip, fingers brushing hers. Fear can be useful, if you channel it properly. Sergei returned, tablet in hand. Teams in position. Thermal imaging shows 3 hostiles watching the apartment building, 2 more circling the block. Patterns? Constantine asked. Clockwork. 90-second intervals between passes. That's our window then. Constantine pulled up building schematics. Service entrance here, maintenance shaft access to her floor. We'll need a distraction to pull attention street side. Celine traced the route with her finger. The elderly couple in 4B feeds neighborhood cats at dawn. Everyone knows their schedule, if something disrupted that routine. Good, Constantine nodded approvingly. We use their predictability against the watchers. Sergei, coordinate with Team 2. I want that extraction route locked down in 15 minutes. Celine watched them work with military precision, every movement purposeful. The fear remained, coiled tight in her chest, but something else grew. Alongside it, determination, sharp as a blade. They might have forced her into this dangerous game, but she refused to be a helpless piece on the board. If Vincenzi wanted to play with lives, he'd learn that even pawns could draw blood. Dawn crept over the city in tentative strokes of pink and gold. From their position across the street, Celine pressed the binoculars to her eyes, scanning the familiar windows of her apartment building. Her heart stuttered when she spotted movement on the 4th floor. There! She touched Constantine's arm. Morella's using the curtain tie like we instructed. Through the lens, she watched her sister's careful signals, 3 quick tugs, then 2 slow, safe but worried, alive. Good girl, Constantine murmured. He spoke quietly into his comm unit. Team 1, clear to move. Maintain noise discipline. Sergei led the first group through the service entrance, while Konstantin kept Celine behind cover, his body angled to shield her. She counted her breaths, focusing on the steady rise and fall of her chest rather than the sick churning in her stomach. Minutes stretched like hours until Sergei's voice crackled through. Stairwell secure, 1 hostile neutralized, no noise compromise. Move to extract, Konstantin ordered. Second team, maintain perimeter watch. They slipped into the building through the back entrance, footsteps whisper quiet on worn linoleum. The emergency lights cast everything in a sickly green glow. At the 4th floor, Sergei waited with 2 men, the unconscious lookout, zip-tied and stowed in the maintenance closet. Celine's hands shook as she unlocked their apartment door. Mirella burst from her bedroom, launching herself into her sister's arms. They collided in a tangle of limbs and choked sobs. I was so scared, Mirella whispered against Celine's neck. When you didn't come home. I know, I'm sorry. Celine pulled back to cup her sister's face. But we have to go right now. Do you have the emergency bag? Mirella nodded, already reaching for the pre-packed duffel they kept ready. Always prepared, always watching their backs. Lessons learned young and hard. Time to move, Konstantin said softly, but there was no threat in his tone. He guided them toward the stairs with gentle efficiency, one hand hovering near Celine's lower back. In the car, Mirella peppered him with questions between gulping breaths. Where are we going? How long will we stay? Can I contact my art teacher? Instead of shutting her down, Konstantin answered each query with patient clarity. A safe place outside the city. At least a few days. No outside contact yet, but we'll review security protocols tomorrow. Celine watched him from the corner of her eye, struck by this unexpected gentleness. The feared Mafia patriarch speaking to a frightened teenager, like she mattered, like her concerns deserved respect. They drove for nearly an hour, taking circuitous routes through progressively rural areas until they reached what appeared to be an abandoned church. The stone rectory beside it showed signs of recent renovation. New windows, fresh mortar between ancient blocks. My youth shelter project, Konstantin explained as they walked through. Still under construction, but secure. Inside, the rectory had been transformed into a comfortable living space. Modern amenities blended seamlessly with restored architectural details. Sergei coordinated guard rotations while Konstantin led them through the connecting passage to the church proper. Celine's footsteps echoed in the vast space. Scorched beams reached toward the sky like blackened ribs. Several pews remained, their wood scarred but solid. She ran her fingers along one, feeling history beneath the char. I found this place when I was 16, Konstantin said quietly. Already burned out then, forgotten by everyone except the kids who needed somewhere to hide. He touched a partially restored column. I started fixing what I could. Learned construction, engineering, made it mine. The admission felt weightier than mere words. A piece of his past offered freely. Celine studied his profile in the diffused light, seeing shadows of that teenage boy in the powerful man beside her. Later, after settling Mirella in their shared room, Celine spread the charity ledgers across a desk. Numbers spoke to her in ways people often didn't, revealing patterns in the chaos. As she cross-referenced donations, a picture emerged: shell companies, circular transactions, all flowing through the chapel foundation like water through a hidden canal. The realization hit her. The chapel wasn't just symbolic to these people, it was infrastructure. Sleep proved elusive. Around midnight, she slipped into the hall, seeking air or answers or both. Konstantin sat in the small library, a cup of tea cooling beside him as he reviewed security feeds. He looked up at her footsteps. Can't sleep? Too many numbers dancing in my head. She hesitated, then gestured at the tea. Is there more? He rose and retrieved a second cup from a hidden electric kettle. Chamomile, though I doubt it helps much with insomnia. You'd know? The question slipped out before she could stop it. A slight smile touched his mouth. 4 hours is a good night for me. 5 is luxury. They sat in companionable quiet, steam rising between them. The grandfather clock in the corner marked time with soft clicks. Celine studied him over the rim of her cup, the way tension eased from his shoulders, how the harsh lines of his face softened in the lamplight. The chapel ledgers, she said finally. They're not just covering donations, are they? The whole foundation is a financial hub. He didn't deny it. You see patterns others miss. It's valuable. Dangerous, but valuable. Like knowing about tripwires and ambushes. Like saving lives. He met her gaze. Even if they belong to men like me. The clock struck 2, each chime resonating in the comfortable silence they'd built. Celine realized she'd stopped seeing him as just the feared Konstantin Volkov. Here, in this sanctuary he'd crafted from ruins, he was simply a man who couldn't sleep, sharing tea with another lost soul. Morning light filtered through the rectory's restored windows as Celine hunched over the ledgers, her tea long cold. Numbers danced across the pages, telling stories in their own language. Outside on the terrace, Konstantin's low voice carried as he conducted business calls, while Mirella's pencil scratched against paper as she sketched the nave's haunting architecture. Celine's finger traced a column of figures, stopping at a peculiar pattern. Micro-donations, all under different names, converged on a single line item: crypt maintenance. The amounts were too precise, too rhythmic to be coincidence. "I need to see the crypt," she called out to Konstantin through the open door. He ended his call, studying her face. "Why?" "These donations, they're not random. They're concentrated on the crypt's upkeep, but the amounts don't match standard maintenance costs." Konstantin's expression sharpened. He gestured to one of his men, who produced a ring of ancient keys. "Show me!" The crypt entrance lay behind the altar, stone steps descending into darkness. Konstantin went first, flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. A guard followed, weapon ready, with Celine between them. Cool, damp air enveloped them. Their footsteps echoed off century-old walls. Celine's heart thundered, but not from fear. Something about this place felt familiar. In a shadowed alcove, she spotted it. A corroded tin box wedged behind a loose brick. Her hands trembled as she extracted it. Inside lay a yellowed paper covered in numbers, the handwriting unmistakable. "This is my father's," she whispered. Her throat tightened. Before he died, before they killed him, he was working on something. He never told me what. Konstantin moved closer, examining the fragment. "A code?" Celine nodded, already overlaying the numbers onto a donation ledger. "Coordinates. They match a safety deposit box at First Metropolitan." She looked up at him. He was their accountant, forced to manage their books. He must have hidden something, a master ledger mapping Vincenzi's true network. "We retrieve it tonight," Konstantin decided. His tone left no room for argument, but Celine had one anyway. "We need to meet Signora Bianchi first, close the leak before making any moves." He considered this, drew tight. Finally, he nodded. "The cafe meeting stands, but Mirella stays here with Sergei under full guard." Back upstairs, Celine watched Konstantin brief his security team, while Mirella continued sketching, oblivious to the tension. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the nave's skeleton as they prepared to leave. "Stay inside," Celine told her sister, hugging her tight. "Do exactly what Sergei says." The drive to the cafe felt endless. Konstantin's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his profile carved from stone. Celine's mind raced through possibilities. Was Bianchi setting a trap? Had they already lost too much time? The cafe sat on a busy corner, its patio filled with ordinary people living ordinary lives. Signora Bianchi waited at an outer table, her usual rigid posture crumpled with exhaustion. "They have my son," she said, without preamble, voice breaking. Vincenzi's men threatened him. "I had no choice. They wanted staff schedules, security rotations. I gave them everything to keep him alive." Tears tracked down her lined face. "I can help you now. Feed them false information, but please protect my Paolo." Celine's fury warred with understanding. She'd do anything to protect Mirella. Wasn't that exactly what Bianchi had done for her child? Konstantin's expression remained glacial. "Your betrayal endangered everyone in that house. Give me one reason I shouldn't end this now." "Because she's a mother," Celine cut in. "Because she can be our way in. Because mercy isn't weakness, it's leverage." Their eyes locked in silent battle. Finally, Konstantin turned to Bianchi. "You'll work with us on my terms. One mistake, one warning to them, and your protection ends. Understood?" The older woman nodded frantically. They hammered out communication protocols and safety measures as the sun dipped toward horizon. The drive back to the rectory hummed with unspent energy. Relief at securing an asset warred with tension over the night ahead. Celine's pulse hadn't slowed since the crypt. Inside, Konstantin caught her arm in the hall before she could reach the guest room. The contact sent electricity through her skin. "Thank you," he said roughly, "for seeing another way with Bianchi, for seeing past what I am." "I see exactly what you are," Celine whispered. The space between them vanished. His lips found hers with desperate intensity, one hand tangling in her hair while the other pulled her closer. She melted into him, tasting tea and tension and need. Then he wrenched away, chest heaving. "Not like this," he growled. "Not with fear driving you. When you come to me, it will be because you choose it, because you want it." Celine stumbled back, lips tingling, and fumbled for the guest room door. Inside, she pressed her forehead against the cool wood, heart thundering against her ribs. She didn't fear him anymore, and that terrified her most of all. Moonlight spilled across the rectory's kitchen table as Constantine laid out their forged documents. Celine's new credentials identified her as the estate executor for Thomas Vale, complete with an impeccable paper trail. Constantine adjusted his tie, the charcoal suit making him look every inch the professional security consultant. "Remember," he said, spreading out blueprints of First Metropolitan, "we maintain absolute calm. Any hesitation draws attention." Celine nodded, smoothing her borrowed black blazer. The weight of her father's tin fragment pressed against her, ribs tucked safely in an inner pocket. They departed at dawn, timing their arrival for mid-morning when the bank would be busiest. Sergei commanded the trailing vehicle, positioned 3 cars back with a 4-man team. The morning sun glinted off steel and glass towers as they approached downtown. "Your father's voice," Constantine said quietly as they waited at a light. "What exactly did he say about counting?" "Count in 3s, come back in 1s. Celine's throat tightened. "He'd say it when teaching me math, like a game. I never knew it meant something more." The bank's marble lobby hummed with activity. Their shoes clicked across polished floors as a manager guided them to the vault level. Celine presented her credentials with steady hands, though her heart raced. "Of course, Ms. Vale," the manager said, checking her ID against their records. "Please follow me." The vault door swung open with pneumatic precision. Row upon row of safety deposit boxes lined the walls, their numbered faces gleaming under fluorescent lights. Celine located box 1833 and inserted her key while the manager used the master key. Inside lay a small black drive and a folded note in her father's precise handwriting. She pocketed both, maintaining a professional mask despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm her. As they crossed the lobby again, Constantine's hand brushed her elbow. A warning. 2 men in maintenance uniforms were studying an electrical panel with too much intensity, their work boots spotless. "This way," Constantine murmured, steering her toward a private exit reserved for wealth management clients. Through the glass doors, she glimpsed Sergei's car pulling up to the main entrance, drawing the fake workers' attention. They emerged into afternoon sun. Constantine's driver had the car waiting in a loading zone, engine running. They slipped inside just as shouts erupted from the main entrance, their backup team creating the perfect distraction. Back at the rectory, Celine's hands shook as she unfolded her father's note. The message was brief but clear. "Trust the man who refuses the easy bargain." She plugged the drive into Constantine's air-gapped laptop, the screen casting a blue glow across her face. Numbers filled the display. Accounts, transfers, shell companies. Her father's meticulous records exposed the scaffolding of corruption. "Here," she pointed, tracing a pattern. "These shell companies funnel money through Vincenzi's legitimate businesses. And these," she highlighted another cluster. "They're tied to Ilya Baranov's strategic fund. The timing matches, but there's no direct evidence linking him to Vincenzi." Constantine leaned closer, studying the data. His presence steadied her as she worked, the hours slipping past like water. The sun had set when footsteps echoed through the rectory. Ilya Baranov appeared in the doorway, elegant as always in a tailored navy suit. "My friend," he said, spreading his hands. "I came as soon as I heard about the ambush. Are you both unharmed?" Constantine's expression revealed nothing. "We're managing. I may have a solution." Ilya settled into a chair, all cultured concern. "Vincenzi is willing to negotiate. Return the ledger, and he'll guarantee the sisters' safety. No more threats, no more violence, peace through compromise." The offer hung in the air. Constantine remained still, but Celine saw the calculation in his eyes, weighing the lives this deal might save against the cost of trusting Vincenzi. "A generous proposal," Constantine said carefully. "I'll need time to consider terms." Ilya smiled. "Of course. But don't wait too long. Such opportunities are rare in our world." After he left, Constantine disappeared to make calls. Celine sat alone with the laptop, her father's warning echoing. "Trust the man who refuses the easy bargain." She stared at the numbers until they blurred, sensing that Ilya's perfect solution was exactly the kind of trap her father had tried to protect her from. The seeming simplicity of it made her skin crawl. Through the window, she watched guards patrol the rectory grounds. Somewhere above, Mirella slept safely. The night pressed close, full of choices with consequences she couldn't yet see. Her fingers traced her father's handwritten warning. The easy path gleamed like fool's gold, promising everything while revealing nothing. She thought of Constantine's refusal to take shortcuts, his insistence on earning trust rather than demanding it. The laptop hummed softly as she dove back into the data, searching for the truth hidden beneath Ilya's smooth promises. Her father had left her more than numbers. He'd left her a compass for navigating treacherous waters. In the rectory's silence, that compass pointed away from easy bargains and toward the harder path, the one that demanded courage instead of compromise. Dawn hadn't yet touched the rectory windows when Celine's gasp broke the pre-morning silence. Her fingers flew across the laptop keyboard, cross-referencing patterns she'd been tracking all night. The blue light of the screen cast shadows across her tired face as she leaned forward, heart racing with discovery. "Oh my God," she whispered, double-checking the decryption for the third time. There it was, a templated warrant form, complete with signature blocks and official seals, waiting only for names and dates to be filled in. The document practically screamed corruption, a ready-made tool for Vincenzi to seize assets through Detective Calder. Each official stamp and letterhead, mockingly legitimate, turning the law into a weapon for theft. She pushed back from the makeshift desk, running her hands through her tangled hair. This was worse than she'd imagined. Systematic, organized corruption with official blessing. Her father had been right all along. She hurried down the rectory's dark hallway, her soft footsteps echoing against ancient stone walls. Shadows played across weathered religious artwork as she made her way to Constantine's study, where a single lamp still burned. He sat reviewing security plans, jacket discarded over a nearby chair, sleeves rolled to reveal strong forearms marked with faint scars. His face looked carved from stone in the lamplight, exhaustion and determination etched in equal measure. "Look at this," she said, setting the laptop before him, their fingers briefly touching as she adjusted the screen. "Calder's not just compromised. He's their puppet. They're using police authority to legitimize theft. These templates are dated back 3 years. They've been doing this systematically." Constantine studied the warrant template, jaw tight, eyes narrowing as he scrolled through the documents, his shoulders tensed with each new page. Then he took her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles before pressing a kiss there, warm and lingering. "You keep me alive with the things you see," he said, voice rough with admiration. The touch lingered, sending warmth up her arm and spreading through her chest. She steadied herself against his desk, suddenly aware of how alone they were in the quiet pre-dawn darkness. By mid-morning, they had Signora Bianchi seated at an outdoor cafe table in the town square, her hands wrapped around a cooling cappuccino. Pigeons gathered near her feet, pecking at crumbs while tourists wandered past, oblivious to the tension at their table. Bianchi's eyes darted nervously to her phone every few seconds, her shoulders rigid beneath her expensive blouse. Constantine provided the key phrase, "The chapel bells toll at midnight," for her to pass to Vincenzi, drawing him to their chosen ground for the exchange. His voice remained calm, almost cordial, but the threat underneath was unmistakable. "Your son will remain protected," Constantine assured her, sliding a photo across the table showing the boy safely at school. But one misstep. He left the sentence unfinished, watching her face pale further. "I understand," she said quietly, her fingers trembling around the cup. "I won't fail again. Just keep him safe." Her eyes, when they met Celine's, held a mixture of fear and something like gratitude. After she left, hurrying across the square with quick, nervous steps, Constantine made a call to Ilya, his voice carefully casual as he requested help coordinating the exchange logistics. "Your expertise would be valuable, old friend," he said, giving nothing away in his tone. "The chapel location needs your particular touch." Meanwhile, Sergei drilled the security team relentlessly in the rectory's courtyard, sunlight glinting off weapons that appeared and disappeared with practiced efficiency. He ran scenarios and alternate routes until every man could recite them in his sleep, his commands sharp and uncompromising. The men moved like shadows between the ancient olive trees, taking positions, retreating, advancing again on his signal. Celine watched from the chapel doorway, memorizing their patterns, noting strengths and potential weaknesses. Then she slipped inside with purpose, the heavy wooden door closing behind her with a soft thud. The crypt air was cold as she descended the worn stone steps, her flashlight beam dancing across centuries-old tombs and forgotten relics. She'd memorized the space during their earlier search, counting stones until she found the perfect hiding spot, overlooked but accessible if needed. With precise movements, she tucked the duplicate drive behind a loose brick, then sketched the location in her notebook using Mirella's borrowed pencil, adding measurements and landmarks only she would recognize. Back upstairs, she found Constantine in the rectory kitchen. He was making coffee, the domestic normality of it striking against his dangerous grace. Steam rose from the espresso machine as he moved with efficient economy, the scent rich and grounding. When he turned, their eyes met and held across the sunlit space. "I should check the perimeter reports," he said, but didn't move, as though anchored by her presence. Celine stepped closer, drawn by the tension humming between them. Dust motes danced in the light between them. "I want you," she admitted, voice barely above a whisper, the truth of it burning in her chest. "But I need to choose it without fear pushing me, to know it's real, to know I'm not just reacting to danger." His inhale was sharp, nostrils flaring slightly. He set down his coffee cup with careful control, the porcelain making a soft click against the countertop. "I will wait," he promised roughly. "As long as you need. My need doesn't override your choice. Never." When he stepped back, putting space between them, she saw how it cost him. His hands were clenched at his sides, chest rising with controlled breaths. The restraint in his powerful frame made her ache, with a mixture of gratitude and frustration. No one had ever given her space to choose before. The afternoon light was fading when a courier arrived. Cap pulled low over his eyes as he handed over an envelope sealed with Ilya's distinctive mark. Constantine broke the wax with his thumb, revealing police route adjustments for their convoy, changes he hadn't authorized. The papers detailed roadblocks, patrol schedules, and alternate paths through the city. His expression didn't change as he tucked the papers into his jacket pocket. But Celine saw the subtle tightening around his eyes, the almost imperceptible straightening of his spine. He'd test these routes personally before trusting them, she realized. Trust, even with old friends, had limits. As dusk gathered, painting the rectory walls with amber light, Celine found Mirella in their shared room, sketching by lamplight. Her sister's fingers moved quickly across the page, capturing the rectory's layout with remarkable accuracy. She looked up with worried eyes when Celine entered. "I'll be fine," Celine assured her, pulling her into a tight hug, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. She pressed the non-traceable phone into Mirella's hand, closing her fingers around it firmly. "One rule. If we're separated more than 10 minutes, call Sergei first, then me. Promise? No matter what happens." "Promise," Mirella whispered, squeezing back hard. "Be careful. Don't try to be brave if things go wrong, just come back." Celine changed into dark clothes, suitable for night movement, the fabric sturdy, yet flexible enough for quick movement. She braided her hair tightly away from her face, her mind already mapping contingencies, exits, worst-case scenarios. Through the window, she watched Constantine's men performing final weapons checks in the gathering darkness, their movements crisp and synchronized. The exchange location would be secured by now, every angle covered, every approach watched. In the chapel, candles flickered against approaching darkness, casting long shadows across ancient stone. Celine knelt briefly in a pew, not praying exactly, but gathering her resolve. The duplicate drive rested safely in its stone nest below. Whatever happened tonight, there would be proof of the corruption that had haunted her family for so long. She touched her father's note in her pocket, his warning about easy bargains and men who smile too readily while offering them. The night ahead would be many things, but easy wasn't one of them. Rising, she squared her shoulders and headed for the courtyard where Constantine waited by the cars, his tall figure instantly recognizable among his men. His eyes found her immediately across the distance, asking a silent question. She nodded once, a promise and agreement wrapped in a single gesture. They were as ready as they could be. Guards took positions around the convoy, weapons discreet but accessible. Sergei ran through final radio checks, his voice a low murmur as he confirmed positions and backup plans. The rectory's old stones glowed warm in the last light, a fortress protecting her sister and their secrets. Celine felt the weight of the coming hours, the delicate balance of truth and deception they were about to navigate. The night stretched before them, full of potential traps and dangers. But as she met Constantine's steady gaze across the courtyard, his eyes holding hers with unspoken promise, she knew she wasn't navigating it alone. Whatever waited in the darkness ahead, they would face it together. The rectory's floodlights cast long shadows as the convoy pulled away into the night. Celine sat between Constantine and Mirella in the middle car, her sister's hand clasped tightly in hers. Ahead, Sergei's vehicle led point, while a third car brought up the rear. Through tinted windows, the city's nightscape scrolled past, neon signs reflecting off wet pavement, late-night stragglers hurrying home. Constantine checked his watch periodically, tracking their progress toward the riverfront exchange site. "Stay close," he murmured to Celine, his shoulder brushing hers with each turn. "No matter what happens." 10 minutes from their destination, 2 police cruisers with blacked-out plates appeared, blocking their planned route. An officer in tactical gear waved them toward a detour, the same alternate path outlined in Ilya's unopened envelope. Constantine's jaw tightened. "Stop the cars!" he ordered into his radio. "Confirm the route!" Metal screamed against metal as something slammed into their rear vehicle. The convoy jerked to a halt. Smoke billowed across the street, mixing with shouts and the sudden pop of gunfire. Everything happened at once. Masked figures materialized from the haze, yanking open the rear door. Morella screamed as rough hands dragged her out. Celine lunged after her sister, but another pair of arms seized her from the other side. "No!" she fought wildly. "Morella!" Through the chaos, she glimpsed Sergei trading shots with the attackers until a bullet caught him in the shoulder, spinning him against the lead car. Blood darkened his jacket as he struggled to maintain cover fire. Constantine erupted from the vehicle like a force of nature, his movements precise and lethal. Bodies fell beneath his hands as he fought toward Celine. But a flashbang grenade detonated inches from his face, temporarily blinding him. Those precious seconds were all the attackers needed. 2 unmarked vans roared away from the scene, tires squealing as they accelerated toward the river. Celine's desperate screams for her sister faded into the distance. When silence descended on the bullet-riddled street, a phone vibrated in Constantine's pocket. Not his usual device, but one apparently planted there. The screen displayed a damning thread of texts. From Constantine. "The Maid is leverage. Time to cash in." From Ilya. "Vincenzi will pay well." From Constantine. "Set the trade. No witnesses." The timestamps stretched back days, painting a clear picture of premeditated betrayal. Celine, who had wrenched free in the chaos and hidden in a shadowed doorway, saw the messages over his shoulder. Her heart turned to ice. She had trusted him, believed in the tenderness behind his careful control. But the evidence was undeniable. He had planned to trade her all along, using her sister as collateral. Morella's terrified face flashed through her mind. There was only one way to end this quickly and ensure her sister's safety. With trembling fingers, she pulled out the burner phone that had delivered the first threat. "I'll surrender," she said when they answered. "Release my sister at a public location by midnight. That's my only condition." The voice agreed immediately, as if they had expected this exact scenario. They named a meeting point and promised Morella would be freed unharmed once Celine was secured. She stepped out of the shadows, watching Constantine where he knelt in the street. His hands were slick with blood from the men he'd killed trying to reach her. He looked up as car lights approached, his eyes finding hers with desperate intensity. "Celine?" She turned away, unable to bear the sight of him. Clean black vehicles pulled up, men in suits emerging to escort her. The choreography was too perfect, too prepared. The betrayal had been orchestrated from the start. As the van door slid shut, she allowed herself one final glance. Constantine remained frozen in place, staring at his bloodied hands, as if seeing them for the first time. Then metal sealed her in darkness, and the vehicle accelerated into the night. Celine huddled in the corner, wrapping her arms around herself. She replayed every interaction, every quiet conversation, searching for signs she should have seen. The careful way he'd stitched her hand, the meals cooked together, the kiss that still burned on her lips. Had it all been calculated manipulation? The van swayed as it took a sharp turn. She heard water lapping nearby. They must be following the river. Her captors hadn't bothered restraining her. They knew she wouldn't risk Morella by trying to escape. She touched her pocket where her father's note still rested. "Trust the man who refuses the easy bargain." But Constantine had chosen the easiest bargain of all, trading her life for profit and peace with Vincenzi. The vehicle slowed, likely approaching their destination. Celine straightened her spine, gathering whatever courage remained. She would face whatever came next with dignity, if only to show them they hadn't broken her completely. She refused to cry, refused to give them the satisfaction of her fear. Instead, she focused on Morella, on ensuring her sister's safety. That had been her purpose from the beginning, and it would sustain her through whatever darkness awaited at the end of this ride. The van came to a stop. Footsteps approached the rear doors. Celine took one deep breath, then another, preparing herself for whatever or whoever she would face when they opened. The van doors opened to reveal a warehouse looming against the pre-dawn sky. Rough hands pulled Celine out and marched her through a maze of corridors. Her heart nearly stopped when they shoved her into a bare room, and there was Morella, curled in the corner. "Celine!" Morella launched herself into her sister's arms, trembling but whole. Celine ran her hands over Morella's face and arms, checking for injuries. Besides tear tracks and rumpled clothes, her sister appeared unharmed. "Did they hurt you? Tell me everything." "No, just scared me. They kept saying you'd come." Morella's voice shook. "Why are we here? What do they want?" "It's complicated, but we're going to be okay." Celine guided them to sit against the wall, keeping her voice steady despite her racing thoughts. "Constantine will come for us." Morella's breathing grew erratic. "How can you be sure? Those texts—" "Breathe with me," Celine interrupted, starting a rhythmic chant. "Count in threes, come back in ones, count in threes, come back in ones." She emphasized the key phrase, willing Morella to remember it. The familiar numbers seemed to calm her. Sisters panic. Morning light crept through a high window, painting gray squares on the concrete floor. The door opened, and Arturo Vincenzi stepped in, impeccable in a tailored suit. His smile never reached his eyes. "Ms. Vale, I trust you're finding the accommodations adequate." His gaze flicked to Morella. "Your cooperation will determine how comfortable your sister remains." Celine shifted slightly in front of Morella. "The ledger has a hardware authentication requirement. I need a secure terminal to decrypt it." "How convenient." Vincenzi studied her face. "And if I provide this terminal, then I'll decode it, but I need to see it set up correctly. One wrong connection could corrupt the data." He considered this, then nodded to someone outside. "My technicians will arrange it. You have until afternoon." His smile widened. "Don't disappoint me." After he left, Celine held Morella close, memorizing the guard's patrol pattern through the door's small window. Every 30 minutes, clockwork. The warehouse sounds echoed oddly. They must be near the loading bay. By afternoon, as promised, they brought in computer equipment. Celine examined each component carefully, noting the server rack labels and the sprinkler system overhead. More importantly, she spotted the emergency exits during the setup. 2 clear paths to the river. Her burner phone buzzed unexpectedly. A video file downloaded, showing Ilya bound to a chair, confessing to the chapel ambush and the forged texts under Constantine's quiet questioning. The message that followed was simple. "Hold on, I'm coming." Relief made her dizzy. She deleted everything before the guards could notice, but the knowledge steadied her. Constantine hadn't betrayed her. He was mobilizing. The warehouse grew darker as sunset approached. Vincenzi returned, this time with a knife that he held casually against Morella's throat. "Time's up, Ms. Vale. Decrypt the ledger." Celine forced her voice to remain level. "I want proof Morella walks free first. Let me see her safely out." Vincenzi's laugh was soft and cruel. "You're not in a position to negotiate. The girl stays until I have what I want. And after?" The knife pressed closer. "Well, dead girls tell no tales." In that moment, Celine knew he'd never intended to release either of them. She met Morella's frightened eyes, trying to convey confidence as she memorized the server configurations. The sprinkler system could be their signal, a way to create chaos when help arrived. Through the window, she watched the guard rotation. The midnight shift change would be their best chance. When attention wavered during handover, she squeezed Morella's hand, leaning close to whisper exact instructions about when to run if alarm sounded. The warehouse creaked and settled around them. Somewhere in the distance, water lapped against the dock. Celine held her sister close, counting minutes, planning their path to freedom. She had survived the chapel ambush, the convoy, attack, and Vincenzi's threats. She would survive this too. Hours crawled by. The guards grew lazier, less attentive. Celine noted every detail, which ones smoked, which checked their phones, how long the door stayed open during checks. She wouldn't waste the chance Constantine was creating. Morella dozed fitfully against her shoulder. Celine stayed alert, tracking footsteps and voices, building a mental map of the warehouse layout. The night shift would begin soon. She rehearsed the escape route in her mind. Left at the first corridor, right at the loading bay, straight to the emergency exit. The burner phone remained silent, but she could feel momentum building. Constantine would have frozen Vincenzi's accounts by now, using her partial decryption. He would have leveraged Detective Calder's debts and corruption. The net was tightening. A guard brought water and stale bread. Celine made Morella eat, knowing they'd need strength. The food stuck in her own throat, but she forced it down. Every minute brought them closer to either rescue or ruin. She touched her father's note through her pocket. He had died protecting financial secrets, protecting her from this exact world. Now she was using his lessons to survive it. Count in threes, come back in ones. The numbers had always been their safety net. The warehouse lights dimmed for night operations. Celine listened to the shift change beginning at other posts, timing the rotation. Soon the midnight guards would take over. Soon they would learn if her faith in Constantine was justified. She held Morella closer, feeling her sister's heartbeat. They would make it through this night. They had to. Thunder growled over the river as storm clouds stacked like bruises against the midnight sky. On the derelict pier, Constantine's men moved like shadows, their boots silent on the rotting wood. The warehouse loomed across the water, its windows gleaming dully in the sporadic lightning. Constantine studied the tactical display where red dots marked his team's positions. Calder's intel had given them the patrol routes, while Ilya's confession, extracted during hours of questioning, provided the building's layout. Every exit, every blind spot mapped. The feed from Celine's burner phone filled his tablet screen. He watched her receive his message, saw the moment understanding lit her eyes. "I knew you didn't," she mouthed, tears gleaming briefly before she steeled herself. His throat tightened. "This ends tonight," he whispered into his radio, his voice carrying to the teams staged around the warehouse perimeter. The words felt like a prayer. Inside, Celine stood over the terminal, her fingers hovering above the keyboard as technicians hovered nearby. "The boot sequence is corrupted," she announced, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I need a clean start or the decryption could fail." The lead tech cursed but began the reboot. Celine used those precious seconds to wedge a chair under the door. Handle, her movements precise and controlled. Morella watched from the corner, understanding in her eyes, as Celine moved to the fire alarm. Glass shattered under Celine's elbow. Alarms screamed to life as water cascaded from the sprinklers, drenching everything. Shouts of confusion echoed through the warehouse as guards scrambled to respond. That chaos was Constantine's signal. His teams breached simultaneously, front and rear, loading bays exploding inward as flashbangs temporarily blinded the security posts. Gunfire erupted in staccato bursts, bullets punching through metal and concrete. Constantine moved like death itself, each motion economical and lethal. A guard emerged from the steam of sprinklers. Constantine dropped him without breaking stride. Pain flared along his ribs as a bullet grazed him, but he pushed through it, focused only on reaching Celine. The second shot caught him harder, ripping into his shoulder. He grunted, spun, and eliminated the shooter with 2 precise rounds. Blood soaked his tactical vest, but he barely felt it. The pain was distant, unimportant. Celine guided Morella through the chaos, counting electrical panels just as she'd planned. 3 panels, turn right. 2 more, duck left. The service corridor was narrow, but it led toward the river exit she'd memorized during her observations. Footsteps pounded behind them. A guard appeared, weapon raised. Morella screamed as Celine shoved her sister behind her, placing herself between the gun and the girl. But then Constantine was there, moving like a force of nature. He disarmed the guard with brutal efficiency, a strike to the throat, an arm lock that ended in a crack, a final blow that ensured the man wouldn't rise again. His eyes blazed as he pulled both sisters behind him, checking them for injuries with quick, gentle hands. For a heartbeat, time seemed to stop. Constantine pressed his forehead to Celine's, his breath ragged. "You lead me to the ledger," he said. "We finish this together." His radio crackled, and he spoke quickly to Sergei, directing him to escort Morella to the pier where Calder waited with the extraction boat. Around them, the warehouse echoed with combat. Water continued to rain down, mixing with blood on the concrete floor. Lightning flashed through the high windows, illuminating the scene in stark bursts. Bodies on the ground, emergency lights spinning red through the artificial rain, and Constantine standing like a shield before the sisters he'd sworn to protect. Morella clutched Celine's hand. "I don't want to leave you." "Trust Sergei," Celine whispered, hugging her sister fiercely. "He'll keep you safe until we finish this." She pressed the burner phone into Morella's pocket. "Remember what I taught you about counting in threes." Sergei appeared like a ghost through the sprinkler mist, his tactical gear gleaming wet. He nodded once to Constantine, then guided Morella toward the exit with a gentle but urgent hand on her shoulder. The girl looked back once, her eyes wide with fear and love, before disappearing into the chaos. Constantine reloaded his weapon with mechanical precision, his injured shoulder held stiff. Blood darkened his sleeve, but his hands remained steady. "The ledger?" "Hidden in the server room," Celine confirmed. "I can access it, but we'll need to cross the main floor." She looked at his wounds with concern. "You're hurt." "It doesn't matter." His voice was granite and steel. "Show me the way." Another explosion rocked the building, his team breaching the upper level. The storm broke overhead, rain hammering the roof in sheets. Through the cacophony, Celine could hear shouts and gunfire from multiple directions as Vincenzi's men realized they were surrounded. She took a deep breath, oriented herself using the electrical panels, and prepared to lead Constantine to the servers that could end this war. The night wasn't over yet. Thunder cracked overhead as Celine and Constantine entered the server room, emergency lights casting red shadows across the racks of humming equipment. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, inserting her father's drive with practiced precision. "Power redundancy confirmed," she murmured, eyes scanning lines of code. "Initiating primary upload sequence." The screen flickered as she entered the cipher, each character an echo of her father's careful teachings. A crash against the door made her jump. Constantine dragged a heavy storage cabinet across the floor, bracing it against the entrance. He checked his ammunition with mechanical efficiency, face tight with pain as blood seeped through his tactical vest. "Talk me through it," he said, positioning himself between her and the door. "Every step." Celine nodded, keeping her voice steady as she worked. "The drive connects to 3 mirror locations, federal servers, your secure cache, and a backup I embedded in the chapel crypt. Once triggered, it can't be stopped." Her fingers danced across keys. 2 minutes, 40 seconds remaining. The pounding intensified. Metal groaned as someone tried to force the door. Constantine's breathing was controlled but labored, his injured shoulder held stiff as he aimed at the entrance. "Confirmation code from the tin fragment," she continued, entering the sequence. "It validates the transfer and—" She paused, head snapping toward a maintenance panel on the far wall. "There's another way in." Blueprint showed access through the electrical room. As if summoned by her words, the panel burst open. Vincenzi emerged first, flanked by 2 guards, his gun trained on Constantine's head. The room crackled with tension and ozone from the storm. Constantine moved like liquid violence, shoving Celine behind a server rack as bullets sparked off metal. He took a hit to his side but didn't falter, driving forward with lethal focus. The first guard went down with a crushed windpipe. The second managed to clip Constantine's arm before a precise shot dropped him. Vincenzi raised his weapon, but Sergei appeared through the panel, blood streaking his face. He tackled Vincenzi from behind, both men crashing into a tangle of cables. Sergei pinned him with brutal efficiency, zip ties flashing in the strobing light. "Transfer complete," Celine called out, voice shaking but triumphant. The screen confirmed successful uploads to all locations. Constantine crossed to her in 2 strides, his large frame caging her against the console. His eyes blazed with something fierce and tender as he buried his face in her hair. "You're mine," he growled, the words vibrating against her skin. "Not a possession. My oath." His hands framed her face, gentle despite their calluses. "Tell me yes or no, Celine. Your choice. Always your choice." "Yes," she breathed, and his mouth claimed hers. The kiss was electric, charged with weeks of restraint and near misses. Thunder rolled as his lips moved against hers, desperate but controlled. She pressed closer, tasting blood and gunpowder, feeling the tremors of adrenaline in his muscles. When they broke apart, Sergei was pointedly studying the ceiling while securing the room. Reports crackled over the radio. "All clear. Morella safely aboard the extraction vessel with Calder, perimeter secured." They relocated to a makeshift medical station in a cleared office. The medic worked efficiently, stapling Constantine's wounds, while Celine held his hand. He didn't flinch, but his grip tightened with each metal snap. "All major vessels intact," the medic announced, applying pressure bandages. "But you'll need proper sutures within 12 hours. When the door clicked shut behind him, leaving them alone, the air changed. Constantine pulled Celine onto his lap, mindful of his injuries. His kisses turned hungry, and she responded with equal fervor, hands exploring the uninjured planes of his chest. "Tell me what you need," he murmured against her throat. "You," she whispered. "Just you." He laid her on the medical cot with exquisite care, covering her body with his. Their coupling was tender, despite its urgency, his hands mapping her skin like sacred territory, her sighs becoming pleas as he moved within her. When she shattered, he swallowed her cry with a kiss, following her over the edge with a ragged groan of her name. Afterward, he held her close, their heartbeats slowly settling. He traced patterns on her spine while she listened to his breathing even out. The storm gentled to a steady rain, a soft percussion against the windows. "Sleep," he murmured, pulling a blanket over them both. "I have you." She dozed in his arms, safe in the knowledge that Morella was protected, that the immediate danger had passed. His body was a warm shield around her, solid and real. The sky was still dark when Sergei's quiet knock roused them. He entered after Konstantin's acknowledgement, averting his eyes from their state of undress. Federal teams moved on the Ledger intelligence, he reported. Vincenzi is in custody. Multiple warrants executed across the city. Konstantin nodded, his arm tightening around Celine. Outside, the first hint of dawn began to lighten the horizon, promising a new day and an end to the long night's violence. Morning light streamed through the penthouse windows 2 days after the warehouse raid. Celine stretched in the guest bed, taking in the peaceful sounds of birds chirping over the awakening city. The past 48 hours had been a whirlwind of carefully controlled statements through Konstantin's attorneys, thorough medical evaluations for everyone involved, and their secure transfer back to the penthouse. In the living room, she could hear Mirella's voice mixing with her tutors, discussing algebra with the quiet presence of Anton, one of Konstantin's most trusted guards, maintaining watch. The normalcy of it almost made her dizzy. Her phone buzzed with a message from Signora Bianchi, now settled into a protected apartment across town with her son. The older woman's gratitude was evident in her daily check-ins, her relief at being under Konstantin's shield palpable in every word. Padding into the kitchen in borrowed silk pajamas, Celine found Konstantin at the counter. His shoulder was professionally bandaged, and though he moved with careful precision, his presence remained commanding. The morning sun caught the silver at his temples, and his eyes softened when they landed on her. "Coffee?" he offered, already reaching for her preferred mug. "Please." She accepted the steaming cup, noting how domestic this felt, how right. "How are you healing?" "Well enough." He leaned against the counter, his expression serious. "We need to discuss changes." Her heart skipped, but his next words settled her fears. "I'm stepping back from street operations," he said. "The syndicate will shift focus to legitimate businesses. Less risk, more stability." His eyes held hers. "A future worth building. And Ilya? Being handled through private channels. He'll face consequences, but not from me directly." A ghost of his deadly smile appeared. Sergei confirmed he never made it to witness protection. Celine nodded, processing this. "I have conditions," she said carefully, "for our future." "Name them." "Complete transparency between us. No secrets, no lies, even if you think you're protecting me." She set her mug down. "I want oversight of the charities and books. Real oversight, not just for show." "Done," he answered without hesitation. "What else?" "We build this together. Equal partners in decisions that affect our family." "Always?" He reached for her hand, thumb brushing over her knuckles. "You've earned that 100 times over." The weeks that followed brought steady changes. The rectory rose from its battle scars, restored to its former glory with enhanced security features. Celine and Mirella moved into a secure condo, 1 floor below Konstantin's penthouse, giving them space to adjust while staying close. They all attended therapy, separately and together, working through the trauma of those dangerous days. Detective Calder quietly retired, his departure smoothed by generous pension arrangements and the understanding that silence served everyone's interests. The transformation of Konstantin's empire happened methodically. Legitimate businesses expanded, underground operations contracted, and power restructured itself around new principles. Through it all, Celine watched him honor every promise, include her in every decision, and build their trust with unwavering dedication. When autumn painted the lakeside in gold and crimson, they returned to the restored chapel at sunset. A small gathering of friends and a discreet security detail witnessed their union beneath newly installed stained glass windows that caught the dying light in jeweled fragments. Mirella, radiant in deep blue, stood beside her sister. Sergei, his shoulder fully healed, served as best man with quiet pride. Even Signora Bianchi attended, her presence a testament to redemption and second chances. Celine wore ivory silk that whispered against the chapel floor. Her hands were steady as Konstantin slid the ring onto her finger. Platinum and sapphires, elegant but strong, like their love. "Breathe with me," he whispered, his voice carrying only to her. "Forever." When he kissed her, the chapel bells began to toll, and Mirella scattered white rose petals that danced in the evening light. They walked out together under safe skies, their world reconstructed on foundations of choice and trust. His lethal reputation remained, a shield that kept threats at bay, but Celine knew the tender heart beneath that armor. She was no one's pawn now, no piece to be played. She was his queen, his equal, his chosen partner in a future secured by love and carefully cultivated power. The reception moved to the lakeside garden. strings of lights twinkling in the gathering dusk. Constantine kept her close, his hand warm against her lower back as they moved among their guests. She watched him interact with Mirella, his gruff affection for her sister, now an established part of their family dynamic. Later, as music drifted across the water and stars emerged above, Celine stood at the balustrade remembering that first night. The warning, the gunfire, the moment everything changed. Constantine's arms slipped around her waist, and she leaned back against his chest. Thinking deep thoughts, Mrs. Volkov? His lips brushed her ear. Grateful thoughts, she corrected, turning in his embrace, about choices and consequences. Any regrets? Not one. She traced the line of his jaw. You? Only that I didn't find you sooner. He captured her hand, kissed her palm. But we have time now. All the time we need. The celebration continued behind them, but they remained in their private moment, wrapped in the certainty of their choice, their future spreading before them like the starlit lake, deep, vast, and full of possibility.